Hey everyone. Okay, I think where we covered was honestly a really good spot, especially when they clearly failed to get any sort of breaks during this period here. This was a very important period, and if you notice, they kind of just left it kind of flat, neutralized around like this. It wasn't too bad, but it was still between, like I said, 6-9, 7-1, 7-4, 6-9, 7-1, 7-4. Like I mentioned earlier, those are high enough for us to have gotten like progressive continuation in range. So kind of like what we were saying before, this area here. Okay, looks like there was some news that came into 74, 38, 75, 74, 44 holds though. They could easily take this back to the means, and like I said, these are more than enough to have been considered max ranges for the session today, between 7-4, 7-8, 7-4, 8-1, 8-3, 8-4. They even triggered 8-6, which honestly they really didn't have to do that. And this is what could basically make it pinnable into the last hour of the day here. I feel like longs off 3-8 are not a bad idea though, because that's still a pretty decent spot for them to try holding here into the close. We'll see if they get some better structure like breaks here. I would say back over 4-8. This is where they really just like recycled some of that range back down. There were some flips this afternoon. Let me just pull them up again though. And especially off like those earlier stalls around 155, 156. Those were the calculated times, you guys, that were also linked to here. Let me just, I have to go back and find out what that was. I think some of it were these. So we could just maybe look for some of these median points between 2:30 and like end of session today. Some of these don't flip right at end of session though. Overnight. I don't know if you guys can see how they kind of just took this inside. This runs till 6. And I want to see 16. These mostly run till the close. A lot of these were basically around those morning ranges. That's why this point in the day was so important, you guys, just to see if they would at least try to get back range. This was the 50% interval from those midpoints, okay, between here and here, okay? So we'd be looking at, let's say, roughly in here. I think because a lot of those are not real time or not after the bell, I think there are some real time odds still close to the 61.5 minute interval. I think somewhere around here. I think it's going to be around the 3:30 through 3:36. Can someone mark these, please? And then the 30 point interval, so like basically the 50% of that range would be right now. Okay, so 31. These are like the final midpoints that are linked back to these areas here at 6.9, 6.4. Let me just measure this though. 18. So 51.5. I think is going to be right around here. 2.7. And then the half point of that is around 14 minutes from there, which is, that would be 27 minutes, right? So right around here. These are very important points right here too. So these are kind of like the 50% intervals, I guess, of getting back out of the channel and retesting 7454. So I would still say that these were calculated times right here. Calculated time of day. Okay. And this point in time here, it's during imbalance prints. This is the only way that they'd keep odds alive of basically retesting these ranges in here, like the 7.1, 6.9, basically like those overnight high ranges by those points in time. Otherwise they'll keep this pinnable until session close. Okay, those are my final thoughts on the session today. Hi. Sorry, I ended up having lunch with my mom, but I mean that was a really good cover up here though for those day trade ones. I still have half my position for tomorrow though, but I mean the entries were good. I feel like those ones I need to probably manage a little bit better once we start reaching the last half hour of the day, just in case they decide to not break back up our range or something. It's crazy how much these contracts move back and forth today. Oh, Buster, I didn't even know that you're on YouTube. Do you just prefer watching YouTube more than Twitch? I'm gonna look at some odds, you guys, for the, like, I know that these were calculated midpoints between our points in the day, like between here and here, but I am gonna see what times have some structural flips around the 155, 156, and 154. 154 p.m. is a pretty generic time of day every day, but maybe look at like the, let's see, 199, 239. Most of these are probably after the bell. Yeah, they are. Like a lot of these are, do you see what I'm saying? A lot of these highs, you guys, like these candles don't even flip till after the close. I wouldn't be surprised if there's news after the bell today. Okay? Based on some of these structures and how they look. Maybe look at this too. This is also after the close, so we could maybe see if there's like some midpoints. I highly doubt that most of these would be in real time, but I mean we can take a look. I would also maybe use some of these smaller time frames, because it's not linked to exact highs, but it's linked to a good structural break. Like you see like this 1, 2, 3. This is a negation of a 3 bar. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 exhaustion. Then they have like this really nice negation period that's happening between 3 and 3:21. So we can watch the 21 minute. This is linked to 157, which would mean the final minute stick on the 21 minute would have been 156. Okay, because that would have been the closing stick. Right here, which I know it's not highs, but it's still a nice looking structure. Okay, so we could still use some of these structures here. If you want, you could also use like the 23 minute, 26 minute. Let's see what some of these look like. 23 minute might be a better one, just because The 155 would be linked with that, okay, which is the high stick, because that's the candle close. So use the 23. These are some good negation looking structures. What else did I say? 26. This isn't bad, but maybe for timing. So we'll watch 3:14 p.m. 50, 46, 3:28 p.m. This isn't bad because this has that 110 period. And then this is actually not a bad one because this has like that period when they started breaking up range here at 110, okay? So this 110 is linked to high of day, which is also linked to the 3:28 period, okay? And it's also linked to when they kind of stalled here. So this could be some real-time ranges, and then we'll do some calculations too, just to see if there's end-of-day odds. Mm. 52-minute flips at 3:40. I think that's pretty much it. The rest of these are going to be after the close. This is the 3:28. This is also really clean too because it shows that really nice structure break and then some odds for some flags reopening in real time. These are basically odds of real-time negation and flags reopening to avoid staying stuck till after the bell. And the 24 period I think was important too because that's when they kind of held the line. Okay, so let's write these down. 3:14, 3:21, 3:28, 3:14, 3:21, 3:28, 3:40 p.m. Okay, let me reset this and then I'll do those manual adjustments. Okay, so 3:14, 3:21. 3:28 was already calculated, like around 27, so that's actually a good thing. And then 3:40. And then now I probably want to see what the manual odds are. I feel like manually, most of these probably don't even break until after the close, but we can take a look. 92 minutes roughly, 93 minutes. 90. Oh, actually, you know what? No, they would align with what I said earlier. Yeah, right at that 3:27, 3:28. 3:27, 3:28 is a very important period. I want to see what the 185 minute looks like. It's not based on the actual high of day, but just the time duration. I just want to see. 3:35. Okay. So I would say if they can retest 7464 off this 3:14 stick, and then maybe try retagging 6766, 69 as early as like 3:21, 3:28, then odds are still in favor that they could come back and retest those core ranges. Apple's about to hit my target too, by the way. Hey? This was my big spot on Apple. Let me just open this here. 305, 20, triggering on Apple. I sent that this morning. So I think, honestly, if Apple triggers here, that should also really help the index this afternoon. Amazon still held up pretty good. Most of the semis were doing good this morning and then obviously sold off when market kind of digested a bit, but they're mostly recovered. Tesla tagged that 423 this afternoon and then kind of came back. Who was asking me about Tesla earlier? Was it Vinci? So I think that was pretty spot on. Like, you could still have watched it this morning. I think you asked me that around like 8:44 my time, so that would have been right in here. So that's still a good trade up to 423 off 412, 417. Vinci, are you listening? If you're still in Tesla, it has to hold that 417 mark. Okay, so a 412 to 417 to 423. You have to hold 417 for that one to see continuation. Maybe someone update the Tesla thread if you can. So nice trade on that though. I didn't take it, but really good call out on that. Did they test 7.4? No, they didn't. Or 6.4? Where did they tag? 6.3? I mean, 6.3 is okay. This is more of the window here around 327.28. These times are calculated, and then there's the 330, 332, 336 period. That's also calculated. Oh, these ones are flips. This is calculated. This is a flip. These are calculated. That's okay. Just great call. Need to get more viewers in here. I don't know why it's been so low lately. Like, I used to always average around like at least 50 to 80 people in here. Alright, let's see. Maybe if Apple gets this trigger, then ES will get some structure breaks. This is a really clean, clear trade on Apple, by the way. Like on a 1 minute chart for the daily, this is insane. Like, this is such a clean move off 300. 350, 395. I don't really have much up here, but we can go back and look at that, but I don't know anyone watching if you guys want that. Those are annual ranges on Apple. I'm interested though because XOM is also tagging back over 154. But Apple trying to break this area here is very important. And then ES is holding at a good spot, I would say, because this is when they failed basically to get back above 7.4 here. Remember how I said at 2 o'clock that was too low? We needed a little bit higher. Like, in other words, them stalling to get into the zone. The zone is at 8788. Would have easily brought them right back to this range. These are the more cleared spots around 7.9, 7.6, mostly 7.7. You see at 2 how they like took it back down beneath 7.4. Even though they were traced at 2, they still closed the 2 o'clock candle beneath that area, okay? And it's not that 7.4 is bad, it's just not high enough, okay, for like a progressive continuation stick. Hence that immediate sell-off back down to like the 6.6, 6.9 range. So, and then this is essentially what ended up bringing it back to our 5.8, 5.475, 5.2, 4.9, 4.4, and then our 3.8 spots. 3.8, 3.5 are extremely calculated. And right now you see how it's kind of stuck right in between, like breaking the channel or breaking into a zone. Do you guys see this or no? So it would make total sense that this would likely be the period of time that has to break that range. So if we look at it from here though to a zone break, okay, and then if we look at it to the actual calculated area, which the next calculated range above here is closer to 9.3 and 9.5. Okay, do you see how this is basically stalling 50% of that range? This is like the midpoint between our 9.4, 9.5 target and them holding the channel here. These were the max ranges I had on the session today, which I don't think would happen, not in real time anyway. But this is like the equivalent of why they'd have to break back over 7.4. Okay, and what kind of odd that gives them. I don't know if this helps you guys at all, but just so that you have like an idea of what's correlated to what. Whereas had they held over 7.8, okay, at least they would have had a potential odd of getting 75.20. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of hard to look at it from this way, but this is basically where they reduced range. Like, had they held at least above here, let me just delete these, hard to see. Does that make sense? Like that, the 7.9, 7.4, 7.9, 7.481 equals 75.20s. Okay. Oh, I don't know what. Oops, I posted that accidentally in the Apple price tracking. Let me just delete those real quick. Off a channel hold. Okay, whereas like them holding here, but maybe stalling closer to like 6.4, 6.8. Even getting back over 6.4 can still give us an odd of getting into the zone, but we want closer to like 9.5. 9.5 is our calculated spot. So again, this is why you need like a 6.6 break. So breaking back over 6.6 this afternoon, I think it could still give us an odd of trying to get into the zone. But you see how 7.4 from this range would have given you the highest odd, like if you had broken above that, because that would have been basically a break above 75% of the range. And if we looked at it from an 8.8 perspective, then you'd need at least 7.5, 7.6. That's why I figured 7.8, 7.9. This area would have been a lot better. 8.1. And specifically if they had closed it during this period here. So this is kind of where we're at right now, okay? Does this make sense from like a measured approach? Because these were the next targets above here, was around here, and then these areas in here. So, and this is on a hold. Whereas this range in here, I would say off a high range is more linked to that 75.02, 75.03. I don't remember what 75.0203 was, but that was a calculated spot. I don't know if this was, what was this ratio? This was the ratio that we looked at this morning. What was it though? Was it the 88 points off flows? No. This was, I think this was the 78 point range off open. Yeah, it was this 79, 78 point range. Okay, so that is another way that technically, if they had it neutral and they pushed in the after hours or something, that could come into play. I think it was even the 68 to 66 point ratio here off close. Yes, it was. And then off the weekly lows prior open was 7395. That's the 107 point range. And yesterday's lows back in here, I think that was the 127, 128 in this area. And then overall weekly range, it's kind of just closer to like the 150 mark. So it's not like a huge area of confluence, but I still think these areas are a little bit more confined above 12, 14, because you can kind of see how they align a lot better with our spots, like 7, 5, 8, 1, 9, 4, 12. Okay. What time is it? So this period here aligns right back to this period in here. Are you guys okay if I clear the chart just to kind of watch this period blank? And specifically with our 240 and our 230 to 232 open close ratios, because these are the points that these are linked to are here. Okay. What were the exact times? I don't remember that. It was this window anyway, but so I would say first condition would have to be that they would obviously have to clear 7466, minimum 6869. Otherwise, they'll keep this very pinnable in these ranges here into the close. Let's start setting some alerts. Where did they end up stalling here last? 6, 6. What do you guys think? You think that they clear during this time? This is a very important period. It's kind of to see if they want to reset odds for after the bell, okay, through 4:30 and 5 p.m. I think the minimum they need to do is get over 6, 6 by this point, and then 6, 8, 50, 6, 9, 2, 5. 70.75, 71. Those don't even give us like the best odds. They just give us like at least a probability of getting back to highs after the close today. Okay, or even some odds in real time relative to how high they clear. They obviously have to be above 773, 74, I would say, for that to be the case. Like mainly over this range in here. So what do you guys think? Clear 7466, 7469, 7471 during this period. I'm only going to set this to a minute because the period is now. If you guys can vote on that real quick. This would be the time of day that if they really want to start reducing range, they would probably do it during this time. So 7466 tagged at 328. That's the first condition. Are these extremely pinnable areas into the close? Can you guys vote, please? My biggest pet peeve is when I see like 3 votes and there's like 30, 40 people watching. Yes, they are, especially in between here. We also haven't even triggered the 60s all week, so if they wanted to pin the 60s, they could. I hope they pin the 70s instead, though. Especially if they pin it around these areas here, because that's just going to keep those odds in play. Okay, so majority voted no. What about YouTube people? Yes or no for Basically, they'd have to clear 6871 at this point in time within these ranges here, or at the very least, like re-trigger 6850. And this is what gives it like an extension for the after hours session. So far, they're still stalling around 6.6. Yeah, Apple's a lot stronger than ES has been, which is nice because they're closing and clearing over that. I did find it interesting though that oil was moving a little bit. The only other extension after 230 and 232 period is right into the close. But I feel like they have to at least have some minimum conditions met here for that to be the case. Because these are the 61.5-minute intervals right here. This is 232, right? Yeah, it is. So the exact time is 34. This period here. I mean, that looks pretty heavy to me. They'd have to have some like really quick negation sticks here off this 3-4, 3-5 stick for that to even try to reattempt during this period here. This looks pinnable to me. I guess we'll see. I would say that they need back at least over 6.6 to have that extension period through that 346 to 348. By that 336 cutoff period. To me, this looks pretty pinnable into the close, which honestly is fine. These are technically max ratios for the session anyway, so it's not like the market has to do anything above and beyond this. But that being said, I would still prefer to pin above 6.9 though, because pinning in the means can still trigger some volatility. Well, they're trying on this stick. This is the cutoff period. See if they can at least get it back over 6.6. Imagine we get like a last minute stick or something. Let me delete this so I can see it a bit better. I feel like this is going to be like that minute volatility or something, just even based on how that was trading. We have a flip at 340. Oh, I think, yeah, I think the minimum close today, honestly, as long as it's 7454 plus, I think is good. If they want to keep us in between, obviously the best case is above 7477. Median is 7469 to the 7471, basically beneath 77. Okay, but that's another area. The area that can get a little bit risky is obviously in the means, or like around 64, 63, 66, right? So this is another area that we could have. Most likely like means to core areas. And where we close is what's going to give us the higher probability of like the kind of range we can get on the week. I think that'll decipher whether we get 75 10s, 75 20s, or 75 30s, 75 50s. Or recycle down the range on the week, right? If they decide core areas are enough in the 74 70s, 74 80s, that would be an increased probability, I think, on a 74 50s close. I'll set some overnight conditions. But I think in general now, to keep odds in play, what do you guys think? Where would they have to hold? Now, okay, so overnight in real time we wanted above 74.11.05, 74.21. What do you think we want now for overnight if they're going to keep these odds in play? Do you want to return back to the balance zone down here if you want to keep those odds in play? There's that 340 delay that I was talking about. And I think that this condition was only still applicable due to tagging 6.6 off the 336. They tagged it to like the exact penny. 7467.50, 7468 being retested here at 340. I think we're okay if we enter the channel. I just don't think we're okay if we come back to the zone. I wouldn't want to come back to like 74.20, even though technically going back to core, you could still trigger core like 75.20s, but I feel like that would still restrict us with ranges being maxed at 74.70s and 80s, right? Because this would probably reduce range, okay? I don't think that we'd get 20s from that, but you probably want to hold above 3.3. 3.5, 7.4, 3.8. Since they held 3.8 in real time, okay, if we get a decent close, what's the big area that we had to break in the first place to get progressive price action this afternoon? There's no way you guys can get this wrong. What was the big overhead that we had to break by mid-session? Otherwise, I was going to switch directions. Over 5.4 would be best case scenario, but I'm saying if they don't pin us in the 70s, let's say they keep us in the 50s and 60s, but we still want to try keeping odds alive. What was the big area that we had to break this afternoon, you guys? There's no way you guys don't know that. This is a range reduction for sure. Like they stalled 6.8. I don't know if you guys can see that. By like a penny, or like sorry, not a penny, like a quarter. They still haven't negated this 3 bar. Come on, you guys. What's the area that we had to break today? Yes, 4.4. Okay, so obviously we need to hold 4.4, 4.8. In my opinion, I think for this to get any sort of progression overnight, or to give us like better odds, and that's assuming if they pin us in this area here instead. Okay. Like they've already kind of gotten back here. You're not wrong though. Like I think we like avoiding the channel is the best case, but we're okay if we get there as long as they hold above that range. I think holding 5.8 is 5.4, 5.8 is going to be the best case scenario if they can stay above this area, but technically speaking, they could afford a little bit lower, right? But that's, again, it's relative to where they close. If they close around here, then I think we could afford back here. If they close up here, I obviously don't want to get back to 4.4, 4.8. All right. Next period here. Clear ahead. So clearly they couldn't clear 6.8. And they couldn't do it during that interval. They stalled 6.6, 6.7, 7.5. $350 stick. We're gonna obviously watch 354, 55 like we always do. This to me looks extremely pinnable into the close and the means and lower core areas. What do you guys think? Do you think that there's any probability that they can clear 7468 ahead of 3:50 p.m.? Can you guys vote on that, please? This chart became so messy, and this is supposed to be my cleaner chart. So here's the 4-6, that was the earliest. I would say for this to have a better odd, this has to get over at least that 6375 this time, because last time it didn't. That was the first failure here at 314, okay? So like at least like around this range in here. And then probably by 4-8, clear 6-6. I still think this is pinnable though, like it's not really going to make a huge difference here. That being said, however, this is still holding up pretty well for after hours, so for anyone trading ES after the bell or something. Depending on where we close today, I might leave some of the contracts that I have for tomorrow that I had bought off our neutral spots this morning. What did you guys vote, yes or no? I didn't see. Majority voted no. That we won't clear 6-8 before 350. Well, they have to get at least over 6-6. What time is it? So that's not bad. 6-6 test in the first, second intervals of the 30-second flip off 348. They did tag 6-6 at 4-8, but still no clearance breaks. That keeps both sides still in play here. So we know 6-6 is the wall. It didn't really look like they would break above 6-6, 6-8 before then, based on even 46 not getting 6-6. I feel like if 46 got 6-6, maybe. They're probably just going to leave this until the final few minutes here to make it a pinnable close. Like, alright, let's see here. 6-6. See if they can clear it within like the first 15 seconds. There it is. There. Do you guys see that? First 15 seconds, they did it right on the final second stick too. I don't know if you guys saw that. like right here where they tagged it. 67750 is still the overhead. This is the spot that has to break. Is this area here. But like I said, if they're reducing range, they'll save this for end of session. There's still no breaks over 6.8 though, right? No. How much time is left in this candle? 6.850 is the actual close on that stick from those calculated times earlier. They did tag 6775 though. That's insane. Do you see how they did it right on the 15-second stick? I know it sounds crazy, but that was a required condition, okay? Like for them to hit it right off the 15-second interval. Look at that. Because that actually helps reduce volatility for that second half of like the minute stick from having retracted back beneath like 6.3 or 6.4, and that'll keep odds alive for 354, 355. This looks very pinnable at our core ranges. Hopefully they can give us a close at least above 6.9. Where do you guys think they're going to pin the close? Let's do a poll. Obviously the other areas would be if they cleared this, but there's also odds they could pin like 5.6, 5.8. I mean, I'm not going to include those, but like I guess the high, I won't include like the mid lows in here between like 5.2 to 5.8, and I won't include 8.8 to 8.5. I think I'll just leave it in there. Can you guys vote on that, please? I think a lot of this is going to also depend on what they do here by the 5.4, 5.5. This is kind of the cutoff to clear 6.8 in my opinion. If they can't, then I think they'll close this in the means. So I would expect it to get pretty volatile here in these next few seconds. Even a 6.6 stall ahead of 354, 55. They're really reducing range on this. See that reduction stick, you guys? That was off the 6.6 stalls and 6.8 stalls. So just be a little bit cautious here into the final few minutes into the close here. They'd obviously need a pretty big negation stick at 55 to keep this in play. And obviously holds above 5.4, 5.6. Otherwise that volatility is going to still be relative. You see that? That is insane. They like flipped at the final seconds here. They're trying to keep this still in play. I voted that they could pin around 6-9, but obviously I could be wrong. Like that's mainly if they want to keep this for the like the last few seconds of the day or something. Or like pin those calculated areas there. Mainly because those were calculated times. There's the 6-9. What did you guys vote for? I voted for the 6-9-7-1 spot because mainly because of these calculated periods here and where they were trading. But meaning if they're gonna break, they'll probably wait till the very final minute. And I could tell because they were still tagging 6-6, but they weren't clearing it. And usually they do that because they want to pin it. Does that make sense? So they didn't clear 6-6-6-8, but they also held 5-4-5-6. Okay, that equals pinnable. Does that make sense? And I think that that would be closer to like the 6-8, 6-9, 7-1 range. So let's see. What time is it? Now look at the time they're finally testing 6-8, right at 5-7, 5-8. Look, 6-9-7-5, 6-8.5. That's actually hilarious because that would make sense that they would do that like right at this point in time. To try giving us that pin into the close. 7-4 and higher is going to be the best case scenario, but honestly, even if they pin around 7-1 or 6-9, that's probably fine. It does seem like the most calculated area to pin it based on what they did at these points in time. Do you see how slow the 5-9 stick's moving? Even though it's the end of day stick, because it's a pinnable spot. Isn't that crazy? Look at, have you ever seen the 5-9 stick move like that? It's because it knows that these are like the max ranges into the close for real time. So let's see. See if they can at least close over 6-9. I really would like them to close over 6-9. If they close it around 6-6, 6-8, it's not the worst case, but that does imply that they could keep the channel in play tonight, okay? If they keep it around here. 6-4, 6-5 real-time close, they could definitely keep channel in play. We'll see where they close the actual session, but these were very calculated spots for them to kind of max range it to for end of day, especially after they kind of stalled the 6-6, 6-8 ranges in here. Okay, I'm going to sign off, you guys. Good session today. Review. We hit our core areas. This puts us in a really interesting spot to end the week because technically this isn't really high enough. We kind of need around here, but the conditions are going to just mainly be if we can still hold this range in here, then it keeps these areas in here active, okay? And I think weekly targets basically remain the same in this range in here. Another actually easy way that you guys can think about this week is if they don't trigger max upside, max downside, which I didn't think that they would. Okay, you know how we held 5-4, but you know how there's some room to 3-3, 3-4, like basically these ranges in here, these areas in here. Do you see that? Remember like that 18 8-point range that I talked about last week? You could also reduce these off the open close ratios and the high ratios, and that could give you a pretty good idea of like the max areas for the week. Okay, so that's why I was thinking maybe they'll be around like the zone or 04 or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? Like in this area here. Okay, or off highs. That would be closer to like the 75, 10, 12. Hopefully this makes sense. And 2, 1. Does that make sense, you guys? This is off the 18. That'd basically be like 100 points to where they opened, and then this basically is like, while it could test highs, it might not take them out. So I think this is pretty spot on. Okay, like this is where they could maybe max range if they decided to delete these. If they decided to stall, okay? I need to delete the 2-8. Does that make sense? So more like some zone areas instead. And a lot of it, like I said, is going to depend on where they end up closing this. So fingers crossed we at least get 6-4 to 7-1. Okay?